the differences between 2019 memo issuance and 2020 memo issuance, you see a very similar pattern. One of the things that we are, really had a lot of conversation with airlines about recently was that is still very static and very similar. Now, one of the reasons is because airline utilize audit companies to be able to issue their memos. And audit companies usually run in arrears about 60 to 90 days. So right now, they are just starting the work on the March tickets. So it's really the patterns of memos that have been issued, with the exception of chargebacks, are truly from previous time frame. So the next is going to really impact, and I think that we will be seeing potentially a drop in 2020 memos because there aren't a lot of tickets that are being flown. However, the chargebacks are a little bit different, and depending on how an airline manages their chargeback memos, some of them handle it in-house, and they were consistently working those through the whole March, April, May timeframe, and you could definitely see that there are some increases in volume and value. Additionally, you see some spikes. And the reason for those spikes is that there was a particular audit company that was unable to work from home. Their company was closed due to COVID-19, and they did not have the capability, except in very, very limited ways, to work from home. So you see those big spikes when they actually were able to get back to the office and start working again. A little unusual for the time frame, but I wanted to be sure that everyone understood kind of why they were seeing those spikes. We'll see how things go. There are a lot of airlines, we've heard through the credit card subgroup, that if the chargeback comes through for a canceled flight, they're accepting those chargebacks and not issuing the memo to the agent. However, that's not what every airline is doing. Every airline is free to make their own decisions on how to manage that. And so there will be some. It's just kind of going to be a little bit further down the road to see how that impacts the entire overall process.
What I found pretty amazing with with the debit memo working group in general, but the chargeback group, is especially as COVID-19 hit, they really wanted to get on the phone together and talk about how they could try to work together to minimize, if you will, the chaos that was happening. And again, like you said, not everybody's going to do things the same way, and it may not necessarily change everybody's mind, but I think it's really great to see the folks coming together and trying to figure out how they can best solve problems and make it just a bit easier on each other if possible. And ATPCO has actually done something pretty amazing also. They have General Rule 0, which they've created with the help of the industry. And something that would have taken everyone a couple of years, they've now done in a couple of weeks. And so what does this actually do? Well, when the ticket is issued, there are obviously rules that go around with that ticket. We call them FAIR rules, right? Mm-hmm. And so in addition to ticket validity, which I just talked about, there's also the FAIR rules. And also along with that is what fees are being charged when you take that ticket and exchange it in the future. Well, airlines are really wanting to give a lot of flexibility right now because passengers obviously don't know when they're going to fly. They don't even know that they're going to fly the same itinerary. So ATPCO is giving airlines a way to basically file new rules for that transaction. So in a very high level way, kind of set aside the rules that were there and use these new rules instead on a massive scale. And that was not there before. The second piece of that, which is really cool, is allows the agency to use the GDS auto repricing tool to actually do that exchange now. And so they can kind of set aside those rules and use the new ones and use an auto repricing tool that allows them to do things sometimes without waivers. And so they don't have to manually go in and do that exchange, which we all know takes just a ton of time, right? And this also avoids debit memos, which is, of course, for you and I, key.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think it's huge that all three of those constituents, ATPCO, the airlines, and the GDSs, could manage to get that thing through and implemented in months.
Phenomenal.
3 months, maybe. I mean, crazy good.
There's one other resource that we have. I
great.
mentioned that airlines, or actually I think it was you mentioned that airlines, each airline has their own guidelines on how they're managing these ticket values, right? And so we created a ticket management matrix that is out there on our website, and that walks through some of the most common ways the airlines are managing those canceled tickets, if you will. So sometimes they leave the value out on the ticket, which is what we were just describing in terms of ticket validity and fair rules. Sometimes they're putting that value on a voucher. Sometimes they're putting that value on a UATP card. Sometimes they're actually refunding that value to either a voucher or back to the form of payment. And so with feedback from the Debit Memo community, Debit Memo Working Group community, and others, we put together this matrix of the most common ways, also whether or not ARC can actually settle that transaction through our system, and some of the pros and cons that we've heard from the community. And it just helps airlines just sort of take a look to see, well, what might I be facing if I decide to do something different in the future? So it's another resource, again, trying to bring the community together.
Yes, it's amazing. I mean, ARC has really implemented quite a few things that are helpful for agencies as well as airlines right now. Phenomenal job.
Absolutely. It's important to us. I mean, again, it goes back to what we're trying to do in the industry overall, and that's connecting people, bringing people together. And this is a way to do that and bring them into one space.